This year is for the Aliyat Neshamot, loving memory of Menachem Mendel, 50th Yortzeit, survivor of the Vilna Ghetto. Aliyat Neshamot for Eliyahu ben Yochanan from the Cinnamon family. It's also sponsored by Amy and Elliot Kurtz in honor of their children. Rav Moshe Marisa moved to Allentown, Pennsylvania. Aliyat Neshamot HaRav Elchanon Yochanan ben HaRav Naftali Aryeh. The shir go for an Aliyat Neshamot of these people. I've decided that probably there's a lot of ideas and topics that are on people's minds. So I'm going to be talking about different topics tonight and try to give some kind of a bird's eye view of what essentially these things are about. I'm also going to try to include some of the updates on current events, because I'm sure everybody's very interested in terms of how does all of these things fit into the divine agenda. That's what really everybody would love to know, you know. How do they all fit? So I'm going to talk about that, which I'm sure everybody would be okay with. And to try to give you a feel of the overall theme of what's happening today and how you can make sense of the many things happening based on this overall theme and so on, you know. Also, I want to mention a topic which I've never heard from anybody, because it's really a very difficult topic. It's a very difficult quandary, actually, I would use that word. So, you know, because I'm going to say something that in many ways is very difficult to grasp. The Ribono Shel Olam, God, believe it or not, has an incredibly difficult challenge. Now, of course, that doesn't make any sense, because anybody who looks at this creation says whoever made this creation is off the charts. I mean, it's obviously, there's no mind, there's no any kind of intellectual ability to comprehend how anybody could have come up with this universe. It's just, you know, beyond imagination. But there is something that is a challenge. From our perspective, it is a challenge. And it would be very difficult for us to solve it. Yet, the Ribono Shel Olam, of course, has solved it. And that itself, the fact that he solved our problem, is a tremendous good news for all of us. What was the problem? Probably people are curious. As we will see, God created this universe. Actually, it's far more than the universe. It's creation itself, with a fundamental principle that cannot be violated. And I'm going to explain what the principle is, why it cannot be violated. And the Gemara talks very harshly about somebody who thinks that God does overlook, and so on. And I'm sure it's on everybody's mind, this idea, and so on. And what is that problem? As I will explain, the problem is that you do not get the future world unless you earn it. God will not give you the future world which obviously is eternal, and we know it, of course, as Olam Haba, as the future world, which is eternal. If you want, you can define Olam Haba, which is the future world, as infinite bliss eternally. It's really what it is. You can't get better than that. It's infinite, and it goes on forever. And forever means forever. We cannot in any way imagine what that means, forever. In any case, that's the rule, that's the principle. You cannot get Olam Haba unless you deserve it. That's number one. Idea number two is a direct contradiction. God loves the Jewish people. How do I know? He says it. Ki ahevcha Hashem Elokecha. For the Lord your God does love you. And God does not lie. Even an iota. God stands for truth. Hashem Kriyashma. Hashem Elokechem Emes. Literally. In fact, it's absolute. He will never deviate, and so on. And that was only one time that God ever told what's called a white lie. But it was okay, because it was white. It wasn't real lie, and so on. And he did it to preserve unity. And it's the only time you're allowed to do that, is to keep the peace. That's how important peace is. So, God loves the Jewish people. So, what happens if at the end of time, which means right before the Messianic era, or before the end, there are people among the Jews that do not deserve Olam Haba? What do? Bad news for those people. Because they cannot get Olam Haba unless they deserve it. But what happens if they did not earn that idea that they deserve Olam Haba? Then by the rules that God set up, He established the rule, which is absolute. You can't get it. You're going to ask me, what do you mean they can't get it? But they did do some good. Nobody's completely evil. So what happens to them? What happens to all those ideas, the good that they did? And the answer is, when God said that you must earn, you must be recompensed totally for whatever good you did. The problem is, like I said, to get the ultimate good, which is the future world, you have to earn it. So what God does is He brings those people back to life. It's called reincarnation or whatever. And they will come back wealthy or in some way have a great life. They must get back exactly what they did, whether it be for good or bad, you see. So everybody gets what they deserve. The question is, everybody wants to deserve the future world. That's what's called the payoff, and so on. So how's God going to get everybody in the future world? If He Himself established the fact that you must earn the future world, you have to do enough good deeds that will get you the future world. And that's, like I said, inviolate, right? That is a real existential problem. How do you get it? And remember, the will of God always will dominate. He will get them the future world. But then God has somebody who always argues God against Him giving anything that you don't deserve. God created an angel. It's called a Satan, right? And that Satan's job is to represent justice, midas hadin, right? And he will argue, you can't give this guy Olam Haba. He doesn't deserve it, because he knows exactly, he has to know what that person did. And he's the one who's going to argue. He's the ultimate enemy of everybody, you see. So the question then is, of course, how will it work? And I want to try to answer that, you know? And that will also be the answer. Why do we have to work for it? Why? You know, God can do whatever he wants. There's nobody that opposes him unless he creates the opposition itself. So that's the ultimate dominating force. How did he solve that problem? And I will explain how he solved the problem. And that's a hint that you got to get in line to the way the solution is, so you can actually assist them in solving the problem. And there is a way. Anyway, and then I will also, besides solve that, okay, what is Judaism really? What's the overall game plan? That's the question. You know, we know Judaism is a religion, right? But what is the essence of that religion, really? How would I define Judaism? By its game plan, and so on. Most people don't really know. If you ask a person, you know, what is the game plan that's called Judaism? You know, they don't know. They'll tell you it's mitzvahs, right? And really it's not, even though that's the essential feature. So I'm going to talk about that. See, well, you're going to walk away from this year sort of like with a knowledge of many critical areas that will answer many difficult ideas. That's what I want to do. As opposed to just talking about one topic in an extensive way. I want to give you a bird's eye view of fundamental ideas of Judaism and so on. Anyway, so that serves as an introduction. Okay. First, what is the ultimate game plan? Means, what exactly is Judaism? And so on. Well, it's obviously about a deity, God, obviously. So what God decided, and nobody really knows why, he wants to create a human, a recipient of his largesse, which is of course ultimately Olam Haba. He wants to create that and provide that eternally to a human being. Fine. And he makes that decision. Whatever I will give them will be eternal. And it will be the best thing ever that can actually exist. Now, what does that mean? So he decided that God decided that he's going to conceal something. And what that concealment is all about is he will decide that he is the ultimate reality. He will conceal that. And he wants to give mankind the task of discovering that. But there are two things that man has to discover. Mankind, of course, means men and women, doesn't make a difference. They have to discover that there's a dimension that is divine. And that is the ultimate dimension of reality. And the second thing they have to discover is who they are. Who are you really? And so on. And not only do they have to discover that, they have to realize, besides the fact that discover it, they have to demonstrate that they know the answer. Okay? In other words, they have to follow a reality that is the reality that truly leads to a demonstration of these ideas. Who is God, in the sense that there is a higher dimension? And the second thing is that mankind, who are they? Who are you? Which is your reality, and so on. And the ultimate discovery is so astonishing that God has never revealed in a detailed way these two realities, and so on. He hints at it, but he will not tell you who you are, which we know is the soul, Neshama itself. And he will not tell you, of course, who he is, what type of a being he is. And the truth is that the answer to these two questions is astonishing. In fact, it is so shocking, the answer to these things, that it cannot be demonstrated or revealed while you're alive. And it cannot be revealed where you are. You cannot know the answer to these questions in where you're going to reside, which of course is the physical universe. You cannot know the answer. In fact, the Gemara says, "Ayin lo yiroah," so the eye has never beheld. Everything that was revealed in the prophets and so on was revealed. That's it. But what will be in the future, which is Olam Haba, the eye has never seen that reality. That is how astonishing it is. It can only be revealed in a unique place that was created for that purpose. The revelation of these two realities. Who is God and who is the Neshama? Which is interesting. What is that place called? Olam Haba. That's it. That's why he needs a special place. He cannot reveal those two ideas, okay, at the place of where we are at. And that's why it says in the Torah, Lo yirani ha'odem b'chai. You can't. I cannot reveal. Now, apparently we don't know why. So what? No. Because Olam Haba is not another place. It's not like, well, he's going to reveal what's on the planet Mars. No. It's a different existence than Mars. You see, it's not physical. In fact, I'll tell you something shocking. Olam Haba is not spiritual at all. You see, that's interesting. Most people think it's the height of spirituality. No, it's not. It has nothing to do with spirituality. It's a different nature. What is the nature of Olam Haba? Divine. Right. What is divine? What kind of reality is a divinity? And so on. We don't know. People think, well, they go to a concert or whatever, and they're saying, wow, it's all great vibes, and it's all spiritual. I love these guys. This is their understanding, or hasogas, of what spirituality is. I just went to an incredible rock concert, something like that, These people, their knowledge of what spirituality is, it's not spiritual, it's divine. And that's what's fascinating, that it's a reality of which we cannot even imagine. Like it says, Ayin lo yiroah. So it's fascinating, just to even investigate what kind of reality is it. And as part of this lecture, I'm going to try to answer that question. I don't know, maybe it's chutzpah neuro, as they say, to even attempt, how do you define a reality, that we cannot even define? And I am going to try to define that, and so on. In any case, so I want to give you an idea. Don't think small. We're not talking about anything you can imagine. When you really think about it, you could say, if God wants to throw a party, it's going to be the best party you've ever seen. You see? He's got the best ingredients. I don't care what caterer he went to, but it's something that you cannot imagine the food, and so on. That's what God has in store. And that's what he decided that he must give to every single Jew, even if they violate his requirement, which means to earn it. Now, how in the world did he do that? It's incredible, right? But thank God we're dealing with the Rabbanu Shalom, who has no problems at all, doing this. So I'm going to try to explain something which, I don't know if it's interesting, you can go your whole life and not hear this type of a shir, and so on, what Olam Haba is, and what is divinity, and so on, Okay, so therefore, what is the game plan? Like I said, to create realities, which he did. God created 6 realities. That's where he starts. And I'm going to tell you what they are. The first reality that God created, because it existed, but it was not revealed in any way. Before the creation, he existed in whatever his reality is. Nobody knows. Nobody knows who God is. Nobody can know who God is at all. It's not something that, well, I just haven't thought about it or whatever. There is no angel that has any idea of who God is. What type of a being is he? Nobody knows. And there's a reason for that. Because there happens to be one idea which is central, you see. In fact, it is so central and so essential, you see, that not only nobody knows what it is, but the interesting thing about that is nobody can know what it is. God is, not that he's not known because he's complex. He's a being that's not knowable. Why? Think about this. Most people think, if I asked you, what did God create? Right? It's interesting. What exactly does creation entail? What did he create? So people say, well, he created the universe, which is various objects, whatever be, stars, planets, and so on, or whatever objects there are in this universe he created, But the interesting thing about that is he created everything. What does everything mean? Not only all the objects of the universe, that's a lot of stuff, but he created concepts, an idea. The reason why you could think is because he created the idea that you could think about. That means he had to create the ideas. Ideas like love, war, righteousness. Those are ideas that did not exist before the creation. Most people don't realize that. And not only that, God had to create the essential ideas of what exists, and so on. For instance, the logic or philosophy actually recognizes that there are certain laws of being itself, right? And they did not exist. God had to say, for instance, between being and non-being, there's no middle. You either is or you ain't, as they say in proper English, right? There's no middle. It's obvious. Who made that? Why is that? And the answer is God. He decides that there is existence, and he labels what exists, what are the rules of existence. And philosophy recognizes that there are rules of existence. They actually follow rules. If something could be and not be at the same time, you would have contradictions that exist at the same time. You could have A and not A at the same instant in time. Now, as far as we're concerned, you can't do that. You either is or you ain't. There's no such thing as something can be in between, or something can be and not be at the same instant in time. You see? Who made that rule? And the answer is God made that rule. So not only did he create, which means that he gave existence to everything, but he gave existence to things, that we would not even imagine. He did that also, and so on. In any case, so therefore we begin to look at a being that is absolutely astonishing in terms of what he can do. But I'll tell you something even more astonishing, It's an interesting question. Well, what's the first thing that God created? Interesting question. Okay, what's number one? This is it. This is the first thing He created. And God answers that question, okay? In a very interesting way. The first thing that God created, and again, He created the concept because until He created it, it did not exist at all. So you could not even think about it, okay? He created the concept called toiv, good. That's it. He created the concept called the best. And then He proceeded to make this creation the best. That's how it worked. Where do you see that? Because it says at the end of the sixth day, okay, it says, Vayar Elokim, and God saw that Kol Asher Asa, that whatever He did toiv ma'od. That would seem to indicate that His objective was to be labeled toiv ma'od. But you can't create things which are toiv ma'od, very good, if it doesn't exist. So He created a concept called the best. And therefore, His main attribute is called Hatova Shlema. God is the best. That means that you can't create a creation that's better than this. Top. Why? We don't know. But if He had to sit and explain it to you, He would tell you, this is the best creation. What in this creation is the best? That's another very interesting question. Okay, what was it that makes this the best? And I will tell you something which is shocking. The greatest thing of all that He made, and that's why it's the best, is He created something that never existed. Never. In fact, God is the only thing that exists. There is no such thing as existence. That's what's so shocking. Existence, Metzius, itself is a creation. So to be was the best thing that He can come up with, right? Because before He's creating the concept or the phenomenon of being, there was no being. There was only one thing that had being, and that's God Himself. But His type of being and our type of being is not the same at all. That's why, I don't know what your being is. There's no demonstration of it in anything that I've ever seen. We see being, right? We're all here. So we know what existence is. You are, and you could see yourself, God doesn't have that type of existence. So how could we possibly know what He is? You see? It's interesting. That's why we lack the ability, because we've never seen that type of being, whatever it means. So nobody knows what God is. No malach, nothing. Because nothing has an existence like God at all. We don't know an alternative to His being. We've never seen being types. How would we know? You see? So God decides something remarkable. I'm going to make something that doesn't exist, never has existence, and so on, and I'm going to give it to people. I'm going to give existence to people. They are actually going to be. Sounds funny, but because we take being for granted. Yeah, what's the big deal? I see everybody here. But what you don't realize, you're looking at something that itself is a nivra, is a created entity, phenomenon. Before God made the thing called being, existence, there was none. So that was Tov. Wow. Ask yourself, what's the greatest gift that He could have given you? Existence. Even though you don't really know what it is. I don't know what it means that I exist. I don't even know what the essence of my existence is. So therefore we have answered two ideas. That the central feature of this creation was the concept called being, existence. He made that first. And then, after that, then God has to decide, well, what type of existence? It's not me, because nobody knows what I am, how I am, or whatever. I'm going to give the best thing I can give. Now, imagine this. You're sleeping, right? You're sleeping, right? And then, all of a sudden, you have a dream, like Shlomo HaMelech, where God approached Shlomo HaMelech and said, what will you like? You want chokhmah or you want cash? That's basically what he said to Shlomo HaMelech when David HaMelech was gone, right? In other words, it's like the genie in the wish. I'm going to give you one wish, and that wish is not to have other wishes, right? The old story, right? Okay, pick one. Anything you want, I will give you. Interesting. Imagine if God appeared to you at night, not in a dream, but as a prophecy, a prophetic trance, which is not just a dream, it's a whole reality of the divine and so on, What would you pick? Now, I'm not going to give you anything, obviously, and so on. But imagine if that happened. God says, I'll give you one wish, for whatever reason. Pick it. And since it's a kol yochel, you can ask, it's incredible what you can ask for. Money, marriage, anything you want. Answer to yourself. What would you pick? I'll tell you what I would pick. Maybe some of you figured it out, right? I'd say, okay, look, for whatever reason, if you want to give me a wish, right, and you're leaving it up to me, I'll tell you what I want. Obviously, I'm going to pick the best thing I can for myself, right? I'm going to pick something toiv for me, right? What would I pick? I'll tell you how I'll pick. Whoever thought of that, great. Okay. So all of a sudden, you pick what? Well, I think the best thing that I want, if you're going to give me something, right, is to be you. Right? Why do I have to be somebody else? It's limited. I want to be you. You're not limited. You're omnipotent. You're omnipresent. You're omniscient. You're a giver. You're not a taker. You receive nothing. You see, you create everything. You make whatever you want. Right? Imagine if anybody picked that. Right? Exactly. And that is the best thing you can have for yourself. That's the greatest tov of all. It may sound selfish, but we're not looking here about, best gifts and so on. Right. So, God beat you to the punch. I'm just showing you a possible thought process, right? God says, that obviously is the greatest thing. To make you divine is the greatest thing you can do. Because if you're divine, you don't need me. You don't need anything, in fact. I want to make you a deity, a divine being. And I can do it. I can grant you that wish. You see? Well, would you agree that that's phenomenal? Right. Okay. It is. But there's a problem here. What's the problem? Because the real definition or the real attribute of a godlike being is somebody who can give existence to anything he wants. You can actually give existence. That's the central idea of God. He does whatever he wants because he can bestow existence on anything. So therefore, guess what? I'm going to give you the power to give being to others. It's phenomenal. Would you agree that's incredible? Wow, you mean I can do whatever I want, literally, and so on. So God does that. Right. Obviously, the thought goes into it and so on, So what the Rabbi Moshe did is what's called Hatova Shlema. In other words, once God created the concept called good, then God said, whatever I pick has to be absolute. And therefore, since I created you, I want you to be godlike. God's not going to make you a god in the sense of equal to what he can do, and so on. But what he can do is make you godlike. Right, exactly. And now you begin to understand that he did something that we cannot comprehend, how he gave us the ability to create. What is it called? What is it? What is that ability to be godlike? Because, like I said, what God can do is to create something that does not exist. As they call it in English, creatio ex nihilo, something out of nothing. There's nothing there. And I say be, and there it is. Wow. And God can do that. That's what he did. That's the Bria, and so on, and so on. Guess what? We all can do it. That's so shocking about this. Right? You're walking around with a godlike ability, and you don't even know it. You see. So what's the problem? The problem is you're all trying to create something that's irrelevant. You're not focusing on what you really want to create. This is the problem. You're going to go through a whole lifetime creating garbage, or irrelevant stuff. We live in a life where we create nothing. We create junk. And we don't realize this, that we're creating junk. So one of the ideas of this year is I want to tell you what to create. If you're going to do it, then you got to know what to do, and not just, right? So the question then is, what does it mean? What can we create? And let me tell you something. You truly create it. You bring something out of existence, really, into existence, and you don't even know you did it. You see, the question is, how in the world can you do that? So there's, and what the depth of this question, right? How do we do it? So God said, you obviously cannot create. You're nivra. You're an entity that was created, right? Who created you? I did. I gave you existence. So here's what I'm going to do. You can't do it, right, in a real way, right? But here's what I'm going to do. I can do it. And here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you the ability to make a decision that you want to create something, but you can't. And guess what? I'll create it for you. So it's two ideas here. One, you don't really create. It's me that creates, God says, right? But I'm not going to do it unless you do the right thing. So in essence, you're a cause. Even if you didn't do the phenomenon of existence, but I didn't do it unless you do what I want. So I'm now allowing you to create by using my faculty because you did what I want. So guess what? I can do it. I'll do it. If you don't do what I want, guess what? I don't do it. So you are a true cause. Even if you didn't do the phenomena, but that phenomena of giving existence can happen because I will do it for you if you do what I say. You see what he did, which is interesting. You don't have the power in who you are as an attribute to do it, but since he can do it, and he will only do it if you do what he says, then as far as reality is concerned, you caused it, you did it, right? It's not going to happen unless you did it, right? Then you didn't do it. But if you did it and he used his ability because of what you did, then you are a cause. You see how it works? It's interesting. But that makes you divine. As long as you could pull it off, you are divine. If you couldn't pull it off, then you're not divine. But once you can have it done, then you are a divine being. Why? Because the central feature of a deity, of a divine being, is the ability to create out of nothing. Think about that. Everybody would say, That's the essential feature of a God, that he can do whatever he wants because he can create whatever. So what did God do? What's that called in Hebrew? It's called bechira, free will. That's what free will is. What free will is, it gives you the power of a truly divine being.
Possibility.
What was that?
Possibility.
Right, more than possibility. Yeah, well, right. You see? I mean, you think about this, how it works. Bechira makes you godlike. That's what Tselem Elokim is. When it says that God created man in his image, what is that supposed to mean? Right? He created an image, that means he gave him a godlike possibility or a property. That's what he did. Even if it's not direct. But the mere fact that something is indirect automatically makes you godlike. That's the Tselem Elokim, which is incredible. And then comes second idea. Okay, I made you divine. Now, we don't know how he does it, how he pulls that off and so on. How does he give man bechira and so on? Whatever. But now you understand, he didn't make him into a god. You can't. What's central to God's existence is that he can do it. But he made you, you're the decider. You decide. That's bechira. So in essence, you're godlike. Because you can do whatever you want. Because you have the power to make be. You see? Now God comes over to you and says, okay, but in order for you to be godlike, right, then I have to create what you want, right? I have to create it. But I'm not going to do it unless you do what I say. You see what he did? So he made your ability conditional to his will. But nonetheless, since he does it for you, bingo, you're God. Because he will always do it. He'll never shirk. Never. If you want this, I'm going to give you this. You see? That's the power of bechira. Bechira is a godlike property. Period.
So the only free will is doing God's will.
Right. Exactly. That's what I said. Most of us spend our whole lives not doing God's will. So we're not God most of the time. That's why it's a waste of time. So the trick is, well, if he's the only one that's going to do it, then I have to figure out what does he want, because he's the being that allows him to do it, if you think about that. Okay, it happens to be, I had to get it from him. But when I do get it, I'm divine. What's the difference? How it ended up, If I can pull it off 100% of the time, if I do his will, as far as I'm concerned, I'm God. Think about that. It's the difference how you do it. You see? Now you're beginning to look at the setup of what God does and who we become. We are granted in this mechanism to be God-like. But here's the kicker, what God says. Therefore, in order for you to maintain the idea that you are God, which is what I want, and that's toiv, to go around bragging and saying, watch what I do. Meanwhile, it's God that pulls it off, right? But what's the difference? Out pops the thing right in front of your eyes. Well, who cares? And so, this is what the astounding privilege that God decides. And now you understand what Tselem Elokim is. And God says that. Tselem Elokim, the image of God. What does the image mean? A facsimile, right? A copy, right? That's literal. That is not figurative. Tselem, the image of God. That's what the image is. And it is an image because an image is a facsimile, a copy of something else. But it's still a copy because it looks like God, that you're doing it, and therefore you're God. But here's now what God says. And now you understand something that most people never really grasp. Why do I have to do anything? Well, you're the chesed. God, you're filled with chesed, kindness. Kindness means I will give you something and you don't have to do anything to deserve it. So why not give me Olam Haba right now? What do I have to work for? Like I go to work and meet this employer every all the time, and the answer is because this is the toiv. If you create Olam Haba, if you do it, then you're divine, you're godlike, and on the list of things to be and to do, it's the greatest thing of all. When you do something, right, then you create Olam Haba, because God is giving you, you do what He wants, which we know, of course, is the Taryag mitzvahs. That's His will. Do the Taryag, and so on, If you do it, then I will allow you to create Olam Haba. That's what you create, your own Olam Haba. And so God says, you're not getting Olam Haba, because the only way you can get Olam Haba is you have to do what I want, because I'm the guy giving you the ability to create, to exist, and so on. So what God has simply said is, I'll make the Olam Haba, right? But only if you do the Taryag. That's the deal. Why? Because I want you to act as a God, and that's why I did it for you. Because you are exercising your godlike potential. You see? Which means that you can actually say, right? I want to create Olam Haba for you. And you made it. Of course, I made it in actuality, but really, existentially, you did it. Because I would not have done it had you not done the mitzvahs. You see? So theoretically, you're the one who makes your own Olam Haba, and therefore you acted as a God. Now, we ask ourselves, wait a minute, so what? I didn't do it. You're the one who made my Olam Haba. In the end, it's still you, but we don't know the underlying pitch. Why is it if I make it through you, what is the reward itself? Okay, is it just so I can walk around saying, hey, I just created Olam Haba? Is that the upshot of all this? And the answer is no, we don't know. There's a difference if the Olam Haba that you made and therefore potentially acted as a God, right? There's a difference between that, right? Or if God makes the Olam Haba straight and just gives it to you. We don't know the difference. But whatever that is, it's infinite bliss. That's what it says. Because it says in the Torah, Lehetiv bi'achrisecha. God, Lehetiv, will do good to you in your end. Now, we don't know. All we know is it's unbelievable pleasure. Tainug amiti. We don't know what that is. But there's a difference if we made it, literally, or if He made it for us because we followed His will. As long as we are part of the cause of the fact that my Olam Haba exists, then that does something different to the Olam Haba that I get. We do not know what it is. We do know that it's Lehetiv bi'achrisecha. You see, that we have been granted, obviously the fact that there's a difference in the quality. And since that quality goes on forever, truth is, I don't really care if I did it or not. I just want to soak it up for eternity, and so on. But whatever it is, the Torah testifies that this is the greatest pleasure you can ever experience, bar none, is if you create your Olam Haba that you will enjoy for eternity. That we know, you see? So we now understand that why God wants you to make your Olam Haba. That's why. That answers the question. Because if you make your Olam Haba, it means you have to do my will. And if you have to do my will, you will receive unbelievable existential state, and so on. That we do know. Because the Torah tells us that, and so on, you see. And therefore, you now realize that the reason why we have to earn future world is because the reward level is infinitely greater if we make our own haba or if he does it for us. You see? And we don't know. We will be granted that knowledge in Olam Haba. In fact, Olam Haba is of such sublime experience that it has to be Olam Haba. It's not Olam Hazeh. We do not exist in Olam Hazeh. Olam Haba is beyond Olam Haba, which is really, when you think about it, it's incredible. So there are things that we can know, and there are things that we can't. We don't know the actual mechanism of what happens if he makes the Olam Haba at our cause, than if he does it, gives it to us. No, you see. So this is a very important idea. And the Olam Haba, what it really is a tremendous Giloi, revelation. But what is Olam Haba? You see, I've explained certain ideas, but let me explain to you what Olam Haba is, okay? The real meat, as they say, What is the greatest experience a person can have? You know what it is? It's interesting in English what it really is, You ever wake up in the morning, hopefully, right? You wake up, right? And you jump out of bed and you scream, wow, another day! When's the last time that happened to you? I realize not too often, and so on. What's that called? Imagine you get up in the morning, you get off the bed, and your body is fully functional, fully. No disease, no weakness, no pain, nothing. Every fiber in your body is functioning at top speed. Your brain is working like a computer, right? Your body, you can lift 15 tons, What is that called? It's a sense of well-being. That's incredible. So you don't need to do anything. Existence is its own pleasure. We don't know what that is. We always have to do something to feel good. So we have to do something, right? But if you're not doing anything, you get bored, or whatever, you get sick, whatever. But imagine if merely existing is stupendous. Not doing anything. It's the concept called well-being. You feel fabulous, Olam Haba is that multiplied by infinity, right? You don't have to do anything. But how does that happen? And the answer is God connects to you and Neshama and opens up himself to part of his existence. That's when you get to experience God. It's called V'davka boy, Tvekus. Torah reveals it. Uboy sidbak. There's a pasuk. It says, Uboy sidbak, and in him shall you cling. What's this clinging business? And the answer is, that's it. You don't have to do anything. All you have to do is sit and seep up his ha'ora. That's it. And you will feel unbelievable. You can't even put a measuring stick to it in terms of what you feel you have. Why? Because you have connected to the greatest thing of all, a being that is existence. Sometimes I ask people, does God have existence? And of course, the guy doesn't sound, they don't want to sound like an apicurus. So they're going to say, of course he has existence. What do you think I am anyway? Right? So what my answer to that question is, of course he doesn't have existence. He doesn't have existence. He is existence. That's a tremendous difference. That means the being itself is pure existence. That's what it is. It's existence that's walking, so to speak. So what you're connecting to is a being that is, the identity of the being is existence itself. You don't need to do anything. You are connected to existence per se. Wow. So why do you have to do anything? Nothing. It's dvekus. And guess what? God wants you to be dovakia. Why does it say uboy sidbak? And in him shall you cling? What's that going to do? And so on, But you don't realize to cling to the existence itself is the greatest form of experience. You don't need to do anything, you see. So Olam Haba and God as existence per se is the secret of what the experience. That's why in Rosa, we never experience clinging to existence itself, or being that is existence itself. We don't know what that is. It's not like a malach has existence. He isn't existence. He's an object that has the attribute of existence. God's attribute is existence. He doesn't have it. He is it. We don't know what that is. Nobody knows what that is, because everything has existence. Even malachim, they have existence. You see, that's why they can die, because if they have it, guess what? You can take it out. You can take it away from them, because that's not who they are. Whereas God, you can't take away God from himself. That's who he is, you see. And therefore, it's just the pleasure of what he is just beyond comprehension, you see. Now, we don't know what that is, and you cannot know what that is, because we've never seen that type of a being, you see. It's when you contemplate these ideas, you're really shocked about the profundity of what Judaism is. I sometimes read an article, especially in Christianity, is God male or is he female? See, excuse me, what? Only guys with transgender could think about that kind of idea, is he male or female? None of this has anything to do with, God is not an object that has existence. So is existence male or female? I'm sure if you asked the spouse, they would have a comment on that. Is my husband or wife male, existing or not, and so on, These questions are absurd when you talk about a being that has a completely different framework of reality. God is reality, you see, and so on. And therefore, all of these questions are irrelevant and so on, But Olam Haba is a place that you don't have to do anything to have a sublime experience. Why? Because the essential experience in Olam Haba is dvekus. What do you have to do? Nothing. It's hard to imagine doing nothing and feeling beyond belief and so on. But that's basically what it is. You see, it's being a prophetic state, nevuah, 24/7. Now, and there's no boredom. There's no boredom. It's like we cannot imagine and so on. So Olam Haba is that. It's a state of existence, being that we've never experienced and so on. You see? And this all comes from the fact that God created the concept called Toiv, good, the best. So he gave us, and this is all waiting for us to be part of and so on. But it required us to be divine, because creating Olam Haba, you actually demonstrated divinity, right? And that's what happens when you adhere to what God wants and so on. Now, this is obviously a very simplified version, obviously, So I've tried to bring it down, try to answer all the details of how he did it, what he did, what we really are, and so on, to give a logical answer to this and so on, So basically, God creates. How many realities does he create? How many layers of concealment did he do? So the first reality, as far as we're concerned, is the reality of divinity, the divine. Then God creates the second reality. And that reality is the greatest of all realities. I'm not going into Kabbalistically how he did it, spheres and so on, whatever. But what he created next was the greatest being ever made. None beats this being. And that was the Neshama, the soul. We do not know who we are. Guess what? Get rid of your inferiority complex. You are really, God has concealed you to such an extent where you're greater than the malachim. A malach is not, a neshama is divine, as we now see. It could pull off a divinity. A malach, the greatest malach of all, let's say, Mechoel or Gabriel, and so on, they can't touch a neshama in the magnitude of the being. Right? The neshama is the greatest entity that can exist because it's the closest to the being of God. So the next world that God created is the world of the neshama. And the neshama, the soul, is so special that even in the end, it is not spiritual. It's divine. You see, neshama, malachim cannot do any of this stuff, and so on. So the neshama is divine. In fact, we see that in Tehillim. In Tehillim, the second day, David HaMelech says, Elokim atem. He actually says it. Elokim atem. You are God. You see? And therefore, you can descend. Since you're so high, you can obviously descend tremendous amount and so on, So the neshama is the second reality. God is the first, the ultimate divine, and so on. And the neshama is second. The third reality God created, which is a whole different reality, is ruchnius, spiritual. There is a spiritual domain, you see, that malachim inhabit, and so on. And they are nowhere near as great, like I said, as the neshama itself. Very interesting, how great we really are, and so on, Then God creates a third or fourth reality, right? What reality is that? The physical universe. It's called Geshem. He creates a physical or material universe, and that is a total reality. That was Adam Harishon. But his reality was much different than ours. He was also physical, right? We're physical and he's physical. But his reality, he's physical, is pure physicality. It did not include a pure physicality. First, it was pure, but his reality was invested with the next reality, which is the Satan, satanic, right? It's a reality which is very different than ours, and it is inhabited by the Satan. It's called the Sitra Achra. It's another reality, you see, and it really is a reality by itself, you see, and that reality is the reality of itself, and it issues forth what's called a power, Zoyama, right? The Satan can project whatever you want to call it, a beam, a ray, it's like an octopus tentacles and so on, the Zoyama and so on. So the world, the Satan and his projection, his Zoyama, is the other reality, and that was the world of Adam. He was pure Geshem. But the interesting thing about it is that his pure Geshem was so great that the Malachim, who are spiritual, thought he was God. That can tell you what Adam was before he sinned. That means that Adam was so great before he sinned that his reality was that the angels, believe me, these are not small figures, they thought that he was God. And they started singing Shira. They started singing, songs of praise to Adam Harishon until God showed them no. Could you imagine what kind of a physical individual Adam Harishon was? if he had malachim singing to him, because they thought and they are incredible, you see, which is incredible. But at least he did not have the world of the Zayama, the world of the Sitra Achra. He didn't have that combined with his world of Geshem. So he was pure, he was in a certain sense, pure physicality. And then once he sinned, the world of the Satan, Sitra Achra, and his world of pure Geshem merged. And we are now dominated by the Satan and his properties and so on. So the world of the Satan, the major ingredient of the Satan is that he's a destroyer. The Satan is a decomposer, and that's why a person dies, because we get killed because of the Zoyama kills us. That's why God said on the day that you eat, you will die, because then you and the satanic world will combine, and the essence of the satanic world will kill you, and therefore a person dies and so on. In other words, the Satan is the great destroyer. He decomposes everything, and so on, and of course that destroys. That's why had Adam not sinned, then he would have lived forever, because he has no Zema and so on. So that's a very important idea. So what comes out now? So before the sin of Adam, he was a sublime being that Malachim thought he was God. Imagine what that is. Then what happened was he sinned. So the world of the Zoyama, which is a satanic world, merged with his, introduced decomposition or death and so on, you see. And as a result of that, of course, he died. But the problem was, since he was the totality of man, Adam, he introduced the world of the satanic force completely throughout, pervades creation, destroys. And that's probably why the universe is always exploding. Why is everything exploding in the universe? Think about that. The essential ingredient or operation of the universe is explosions, galaxies and stars, because it's filled with Zayama. That's what, and so on, And that's the force that destroys and so on, In any case, once there's no more, therefore, previously, and here's where it gets interesting, previously, Adam should not have sinned. Had he not sinned, then the satanic world would never have merged together with his pure world of Geshem at all. And Adam would have lived forever, because there's no death, there's no Zayama, there's no problem. But when he ate from the tree, whatever, he changed the nature of that world, and death, decomposition. What is interesting is everything decomposed. People think it's not just life. There's a law of entropy, that things always reduce. They lose the concept of energy. They always deteriorate. So even in the energy aspect of the creation, energy is satanic. The second law of thermodynamics, which is the second law, is the rule of entropy, and that's decomposition of energy. That itself is satanic, which is interesting. It's not just, it's like I say, it's satanic, and so on, So what's the trick now? So the original task of Adam HaRishon, the first man, the original task was to bring down or more light, which is more God presence, and that would have changed the world of Geshem, which was his world, pure Geshem, that would have kicked it up, right, to a higher level world, into the world of Ruchnius, right? But since he sinned, he had entered the world of combination, the Zoyma, and it descended. We have the world now of deterioration and so on. So, what that did is it changed the trajectory of man. Originally, the task of Adam HaRishon was to bring down higher levels of divinity, and that would have kicked up reality higher, ultimately into Olam Haba. But since he sinned, the world descended, and as a result of that, we now have to kick out the Satan. So the task of man is to get rid of the world of the Satan and destroy the Satan. Really what the task of man, and we've been working at that for 4,000 years to get rid of the Zoyama and so on. It's separate. And now you understand what happens in the Messianic era. Messianic era is where we are restored to being Adam Harishon before the sin. And that's what Chiyas HaMesim is. Chiyas HaMesim is nothing more. Chiyas HaMesim is nothing more than what? Than to remove the Zoyama from the body. And resurrection of the dead is you get up because you're not dead anymore. You evicted the satanic world, and therefore there's no Zoyama, so you get up. That's really what it is. So therefore, every Jew will be equal to Adam Harishon before the sin, because you will have evicted the Zoyama from the Bria, and everything gets up. That's the end of death, end of diseases. All of that is gone, and so on, So really, we return to Adam Harishon before the sin, and we have evicted the Zoyama. We have evicted the satanic world, and therefore we all become prophets, right? Prophecy will be restored to the Jewish people, because prophecy is the entry of what? Of the divine spirit, Shechina. That's what prophecy basically is. You're reconnecting to the Shechina, you see. And now that you have no Zoyama, no problem. You can do it. Anybody can do it. All of us will be prophets, And I don't mean Wall Street prophets, right? And that's really what the Messianic era is the restoration or the return to Adam Harishon before the sin. Then, and that's until that whole time will be 60 years, 6,000. That's when the world ends, literally. That's the 6 days of creation. It literally ends, and as a result of that, we go into the 7,000th year, right? There's a 7,000th year, and we go into that world, right? And then we go into the 8,000, 9, and there's 10 levels of this, and in the 10th level, it's Olam Haba. And that's the beginning of a whole different type of existence. So what you really see is Judaism is basically a return, a restoration to the original state of what existence was, and that goes on forever. And we, the Jewish people, have to evict the Zoyama, get it to the next level, and go up into Olam Haba, and it goes on forever. So what it really is, if you look at it, Judaism is really basically a religion that's a complete restoration of what it originally was. It's a religion that deals with the original history of the world, you see, which is interesting, where everything is rediscovered, everything is reignited, and that goes on forever. So it's only temporary, and this is really, in that sense, of what happens and so on, In any case, we now begin to understand that Judaism is an entire journey, really, to restore what reality really was, how it started in an incredible way, pure soul, went down, covered by a physical body, and then we do what God wants, and He creates Olam Haba for us, right? And then that once it's restored, goes back to what it was, and that remains forever, and so on, And that's basically, you can go on, and so on, but that's what it is. It's a restoration of what was, and so on. And that's why In any case, that's basically what it was, and so on, Okay. Now I'd like to talk about, any questions before I go on to the next topic?
Can we take a break?
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean,
You have like another hour, right?
what?
You probably have another hour.
No, I wouldn't say another hour. I want to talk about current events.
The ultimate mission of Moshiach,
What?
the ultimate mission of Moshiach is to return
Right. To restore. Right. That's it.
So now we want to know what side.
By the way, I'm going to talk about current events. So if you want to really not miss this, come back. Yeah.
Why do we have Moshiach already, dear God?
What?
Where, when?
God knows exactly what the perfect state
I
is.
know, but we don't. We want to know.
We will know when it happens. And so on, Any questions? It's only a 5-minute break, so.
What does it mean to have an Eliyahu Neshamot for somebody in the next one?
Okay, all the questions have to be repeated by the Rav, so make them loud enough so he can hear, and then Rabbi, can you please repeat the question?
Anything that you caused that brings a greater glory to God, you are considered the cause. So you get God to open up the curtains. Doesn't make a difference. If somebody, the reason why he's saying for the neshama is because of you. So therefore you are considered a cause. And if you're a cause, that's what God wants. And if that's what he wants, he makes you Olam Haba.
The question was really, if he's an Olam Haba, is that now Olam Haba the Neshamot?
I see what you're saying. No,
Can somebody repeat the question?
Not somebody, the Rav will repeat the question.
What we don't understand is, wait a minute, there's no Olam Haba now, right? So when a guy dies, right? So where does he go? What happens? Well, that's why there's a temporary stop called Gan Eden. Gan Eden is really a destination that's a, what do you call the stop, for...
Way station.
Yeah, way station. It's really what it is, So wherever he is in Gan Eden, the equivalent of what it would have been level-wise of Gan Olam Haba, he gets in Gan Eden. I mean, let's assume there's 10 levels in Olam Haba, and let's assume there's also 10 levels in Gan Eden, which is a temporary stop, right? So he will get the equivalent of where he would have been in Gan Eden, he will get it in Gan Eden, because that's all that's available. But as soon as Olam Haba opens up with that level, bingo, goes straight to Olam Haba. So you never lose anything, but you are always rewarded with the exact proportion that you did. That never goes away. So if that level is in Gan Eden, you will get that level in Gan Eden, because that's all that's available. But then remember, everybody in Gan Eden is getting their level, their proportionate level. So since you are considered a cause, no matter, it doesn't make a difference that you didn't do it, somebody did it because of you, then you will be rewarded. Besides the guy saying it, you will get that reward, because you have just done a mitzvah by getting him to praise God because of what you did. You are considered a cause. So I just want to mention one thing. People do not realize how exact this is called Midas Hadin. The attribute of justice is exact. I'll give you an example. The President of the United States, right? Biden, right? Biden. He was. This man has no idea of what they're going to do to him in the day of judgment. Why? Every year, 150,000 people die from fentanyl. Okay? Why? Because he has the power to stop the entry of all the drugs. Right? So every person that died, right, and all the grief that has been caused to the parents of the person who died, he will have to suffer through, to undo. He has to undo the evil that he's done by every iota of suffering. Does he have any idea what that is? Why? Because that's justice. You see? And by the way, it works the opposite way. You know, like I said, if you do something, then God creates positive idea, you know. But if you do an evil, then God creates a negative opposite reaction to existence. So people don't realize how exacting God is with justice. You know, he doesn't allow anything to go through that you don't deserve. You cannot get something you don't deserve. You see? And they don't realize how far it goes. Right? So none of these people, you know, people don't realize how exacting and absolute is justice. Literally, you know. Yes. Like I'll give you an example. Trump, you know, he's done a very stupid thing. Why? He does not understand what justice is. Iran, right? Right. Iran is, for the last 40 years, whatever, and so on, has committed an unbelievable amount of death and pain and suffering and misery and so on, right? The Torah says something very interesting. If the Torah says you have to punish somebody, there's an expression that says, "Uviato haromikebecha," and you will destroy evil from your midst, right? And you will not do this anymore, the evil that you just did. And all of you will see that justice has a retribution. So people don't understand. They think that what you see from that is that God says, sometimes evil, you have to kill them. Kill them. Right. You cannot negotiate with evil. So all you do is, if you allow them to live, this type of evil must be destroyed. That's God saying. Right? That means that there are some evil people that deserve to be killed. You see, you can't just, have mercy on these people. Because what about all the evil that will be continue, you know? And this is what Trump, by not killing the mullahs, will bring unbelievable amount of human misery and death to the Iranians. Now, I'm not in love with the Iranians and so on. But in the end, the mullahs will kill to a tremendous amount of the Iranians. The people, they suffer enormously. So justice demands that these mullahs have to be stopped. You see? So where do you get the nerve? And this always riles me up. Where do you get the nerve to allow these people to continue to exist? Where? Because you're president of the United States? So what? If that one guy, and that's an Iranian guy, right? And he causes suffering to a kid, then you will suffer. And if they kill somebody, you consider the murderer, right? He's considered a murderer in the annals of the legal system, right? So where do you get the nerve to allow the mullahs to live? Especially if God gave you the pretext, right, to justify their death. Where do you get the nerve to allow them to live? And the whole world would have recognized that they all deserve to die. Everybody wants them dead. You know, what is it? And so, you know, so sometimes you look at these politicians and you're just astounded by their stupidity. You know, there's certain people that deserve to die. I don't care who they are, because the evil that they will commit will long after them and so on. And that type of evil you must kill. How much suffering has come out of Iran for 40 years? You know? And they don't have to be tzaddikim to kill these murderers. These people have caused incomprehensible evil, suffering, misery, 40 years. So why are you not stopping them? Because you want to make peace? Who gives you the right to make peace if God put in your hands the ability to kill them? Right? What happens if it was your kids? You know what I'm saying? Would that be okay for you? It's astounding what people think that they're going to get away with. You know? They have no idea. Because God has to be faithful to the system he created, which is justice, midas hadin. He has to be faithful to that system. Or else everybody'd be screaming, hey, why did they get reward and I didn't get the reward? They'll all be screaming, this is not fair, you know? And he has to be able to distinguish. You know? He has no idea the mistake that he made. And he's going to suffer for it. Why do you think he got punished? Trump got punished for what he did. The whole US government was after him. The miracle was because he has a certain divine mission that he wasn't destroyed. God saved him. Does he know that? You know, I know a reporter who's part of the press corps. So he called me up and asked me, if you had a question for Trump, what would you ask him? That's what he asked me. So I told him, here's what I would ask him, right? Why do you think God saved you with that bullet? That bullet missed you by 1/4 of an inch. Who do you think did that? What do you think they? And he himself recognizes that it was God, because he never looks that way. And because he looked that way, the bullet went right past his ear. He said himself that was a miracle, because he never looks that way until after the lecture, you know? But he did, and the bullet missed him by 1/4 of an inch, right? So I told the reporter, what I would ask him, why do you think he did that for? You know, just to make America great again? MAGA? You think God doesn't give a whit about MAGA? You know, what does he care about MAGA? What God wants, and by the way, that's his mission. I wish we would get it. His mission is to bring a sense of righteousness to America, because America is a world leader. And if you bring them righteousness, it'll benefit the entire world, because America is a world leader. Yes or no? So I told the reporter, and the reporter calls me like 2 weeks later. He says, by the way, I went to one of the, conferences, whatever, and he asked that to Trump. Yeah, he asked that to Trump. Why do you think God saved you? He asked that to Trump. So Trump realized, hey, this is Barabim, public, And so he told this reporter, I want you to repeat that question, because he wanted everybody to hear the answer. So he got it. He said, because God wants me this world is in big trouble. He wants me to save the world. And that's messianic. To think that way is messianic. So he actually said that. But he's wrong. Well, you know why he's wrong? He's right on that. The problem with him is he doesn't know what the mission of God is. He doesn't know how to interpret the event that God saved him, because he doesn't know the divine plan and so on, But it's interesting that he chapped why the Moshe saved him. Right. And his mission, by the way, is to bring righteousness to the world, to help Mashiach ben Yosef, right? Which I've said a long time. But anyway, he has a divine mission, by the way. That's why God made a miracle. You notice to be attacked by the entire United States government, the FBI, the CIA, the DOJ. I mean, it's incredible. And he beat every rap. He beat everything. The only one that can do it is God. You didn't realize that's a Nes Nigla. And there's another Nes Nigla he doesn't. Well, I'll say this in current events. He's not thinking straight. And so on, but anyway, he does have that thought. Oh, yeah. Okay, let me get back into this. I've said this before, but it's all part of the theme.
Trump is supposed to be the reincarnate of Cyrus.
No. No, it's not true.
Cyrus.
Well, that's Cyrus, Kurdish. That's not who he is. No. Who is Trump? Am I getting into a share now?
This is your share.
This is going to take, I don't know, a little time. Are people up to this?
Yeah.
Most people don't realize something. How many of us are there? 3. Abraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, right? That's how many of us are there. How many matriarchs are there? 4. You ever wonder why? Doesn't seem, something's a little out of whack, And the answer to that is there are really 4 of us, 4 of us, not 3. That's where everybody makes a mistake. Who are they? Is Avram Avinu, right? He's Kneged. They compare him to Chesed, right? Then there's Yitzchak Avinu. He's Gvura, right? And then there's the middle, Chesed, Gvura, and Tiferes. Tiferes is a middle. But a middle has 2 sides, the right side of the middle and the left side of the middle. The right side is Yaakov, and the left side is Esav. Esav is an Of. Shocking, right? Esav was a tremendous potential Of, In fact, the Medrash says that had Esav not turned, it would remain from, then he would have had 6 Shvatim, not Yaakov would only have had 6, and Esau would have had 6 Shvatim. It's amazing, and so on. And the middle is because both were Tiferes, except Yaakov was an Ov. He was a patriarch, which is incredible, and he would have had, like I said, 6 tribes, and Esau would have had 6 tribes, right? Except what happened was eventually Esav turned evil, and he became evil, and that's what happened. So Esav is the story of a patriarch. Now, if you wonder who was greater, was Yaakov greater or Esav greater? Imagine that. So there's a recent Paneach Raza. It says that Esav was twice as great as Yaakov Avinu. He would have been greater. That's what the Paneach Raza said. And he became evil. But the interesting story about Esav is he wanted to do tshuva. You see, he wanted to do tshuva, but Yaakov concealed Dinah. When Yaakov went to meet Dinah, Esav, he concealed Dinah from Esav because he knew Esav would want to marry Dinah. And Dinah was a very strong girl. She's a very strong girl. And she would have, I don't want to go through the whole thing, but she would have made Esav from, believe it or not. Right. Very strong girl. But in any case, what happened was, obviously, Yaakov did not reveal Dinah, and therefore Esav never married her. Now, had Esav married Dinah, then he would have done tshuva, and so on, And had he done tshuva, the whole history of Jewish people would be different, because Esav would do tshuva, And imagine there would be no Rome, because Rome comes from Esav, and all the persecutions. Without going into all the... So Esav wanted to do tshuva, but he was denied to do that because of the fact that Yaakov denied Dinah the ability to marry Dinah. It would have changed the whole history of Judaism and so on. So the Baruch Hashem recognized that, obviously, and he said to Esav, he said, because you wanted to do tshuva, but you were denied the opportunity, because Yaakov concealed her, right? You will come back to do tshuva at the end of time. That's what I will allow you to restore, to get the reward of being part of Mashiach. Right. How do you see that? One of the ways you see it is because it says the prophecy by Rivka, Rav Yavoisoya, the older will serve the younger. When? At the end of time. That's the remez that Esav will do tshuva. So, in 2016, here's where I come in. In 2016, Trump decided to run. He decided to run, and everybody was laughing, right? Of course, he was the comic relief of the election, because he had no experience and so on, And everybody was laughing. Hillary was going to win. The whole thing was ridiculous, and so on, But then, for whatever reason, I realized, right, who Trump is. Trump is a Gilgal of Antoninus, Marcus Aurelius Antoninus, who had an incredible relationship with Rabbeinu HaKadosh. And Marcus Aurelius was a very interesting emperor. He was a philosopher, actually, and so on, But in any case, he decided, so I realized, that he's going to win, because he has to come back. Trump is Marcus Aurelius Begilgal, and this is him coming back and doing tshuva. That's what I realized. And I began to say that. And everybody thought I was out of my mind. And I said that he's going to be phenomenal president, incredibly good for the Jews. And everybody said, impossible. Trump? And that's what happened. He won. Shocking. He sent Hillary into a tizzy. She couldn't believe and so on, But and what that meant was very good for the Jews. It means this was the turnaround. If Esav comes back and Trump is Esav, this is it. This is the turnaround of a Mashiach. What's his job? Esav's job then, Esav as an Ov, what was his job? Esav's job was to assist Yaakov to eradicate evil. Because Esav was Ish Soda, a man who would go out to the field, right, and try to deal with righteousness. This was actually Esav's job, Ish Soda. And the job of Trump, I'm skipping a lot of stuff. By the way, all of this stuff, I have a shir on YouTube. There's 750 shurim. Not all on this, but on the current events. So you could go through all 750 if you have the patience. And read the whole. I talk about Trump and who he is and why he is, and tremendous amount of material and so on the divine agenda. And he won, which is incredible, because he's Esav coming back. But that's very important for Jews. That means messianic era is happening. Not fully.
Is he both Esav and Marcus Aurelius?
What was that?
How is he both Esav and Marcus Aurelius?
Because Marcus Aurelius himself is Esav. Right, it's piggyback, and so on, right. Marcus Aurelius was tremendously friendly with, what's his name, Rebbe. In fact, we owe our Torah to Marcus Aurelius, believe it or not. If it wasn't for him, we would not have Mishnayos. Marcus Aurelius had an incredible relationship with Rabbeinu HaKadosh, and the problem is nobody had one version of the Torah, Halacha, the oral law. Nobody had one version. It was in many different versions. So you had to unify the whole Mishnayos, great Mishnayos. And Rebbe couldn't do it because the Romans said he can't learn. So when Marcus Aurelius in 180 CE, Marcus Aurelius, who loved Rebbe, he made a Roman edict. Jews can learn Torah. So Rebbe was able to get a conference of all the Gedolei Yisrael. These are Tanoim. And he had a 40-year or whatever tranquility, and they were able to write the Mishnayos. So because of Marcus Aurelius, we have the Mishnayos. You have any idea what schos that is? That's unbelievable. And therefore, so Trump comes back as Marcus Aurelius and Taninus and so on, and he does what Esau does to assist Yaakov to bring the Rebbeinu Shalom back. And right, so his job, Trump's job, which he's doing exactly, So I said that he's going to be tremendous for Klal Yisrael. And the Abraham Accords, which of course is incredible, Jerusalem and so on, And his real job is to assist the Jewish people to stop the hatred of the Jews, to begin the process of return, of Geula. He will be tremendous for the Jewish people and so on. And I said this all the way back in 2016 and so on and so on. So he did. And then, which he, of course, he did, and all the things he did and so on. But what was interesting is that when he lost in 2020, so wait a minute, if he's supposed to assist Yaakov Avinu, which is really Mashiach ben Yosef and so on, then why did he lose? Right? Why did he lose? And when he lost, and then Biden comes in, who's an absolute nitwit. What that guy did to America and for the cause of justice is incredible, and so on, But the question is, why did he lose? So in the beginning, I thought that, no, Trump would win because he'll just continue the messianic mission. But then, for whatever reason, I realized why, which was very interesting. And I realized, I changed my mind. I said, Biden's going to win, not Trump. Even though Trump has a mission to help the Jewish people and so on, And I realized why, and so on. Because it says in the Gemara in Sanhedrin, that Ein ben David bo, Mashiach ben David can only come if the Jews are kulum chayavim, they're all guilty of sin, or kulum zakoyim, and they're all guilty, or they're all meritorious, and so on. That's what it says. The question is, what in the world does that mean? So if there's zakoyim, they do great things and so on. So Ben David will come, Mashiach. But if they're guilty of sin, then Mashiach will not come. Will also come. So I said to myself, why would Mashiach come if everybody's sinning? It doesn't make any sense, right? But then I realized why. Because if the Jews are sinning, they have entered the Mem Teshari Tumah. They are at the end of time because they all sin. That was the problem with the Mabul. There was so much sinning going on that they were on the Kulum Chayavim, which means they were all guilty of sinning, and therefore they would Mashiach would not come. But then the main idea was that here's what happens: if the Jewish people sin grievously, then Mashiach will come. But the problem is this: Moshe Rabbeinu in Egypt, right? it says that the Jews were at the Mem Teshari Tumah, right? 49 levels of evil, or Tumah, whatever, right? And that they will deserve to be, to get Mashiach. But then this, which is the end of time. But the problem is this, and that's what I realized, why Biden will win. Because if the Mashiach comes, because the Jews are in the Mem Teshai Tumah, are in the 49 level of evil, that's where the Jews are, and so on. So the Sutton, who's a great prosecuting attorney, gets up and says, wait a minute, Mashiach is coming because God does not want them to go into the Nun, into the 50th gate of evil. So he wants to bring the Mashiach. And that's who Moshe Rabbeinu was, Mashiach, right? So therefore, God wants to stop that. So he's going to end the whole world. So he's going to end the world. And so God wants to end it by bringing Mashiach. But the Satan gets up. And here's the problem. If the Mashiach comes because Jews are doing tremendous evil, that's very bad, because it's going to be a glorious era. It's a glorious era. Feeling of what's happening. This is satanic. Why? Who's the one who's going to suffer the most? He helps the Jewish people get back the Israel and so on. Who's going to suffer the most? The Satan. It's his death. So what he has done is convinced, it is elevated all the people that have power, money, and so on and so forth, to destroy Trump. It's his death, that's why. You're looking at the last throes of the Satan himself. It's really what it is. It's obvious, but nobody sees it, you know. This hatred of Trump has never been, no president, there are presidents that have been hated, but not, usually it's for policy. Not because they hate the man. It's in the, you have to really laugh.
I think the non-Jews like him though.
Yeah. Because everybody, as long as you are honest and you're not biased against him, you see the guy's a decent guy. You know, it's obvious and so on. Why do you think only the Rabbi Shem could save him for everything? Who ever heard of the guy? That bullet was a quarter inch away. Oh, it's a nigla, but it's even better. You know, one thing about the Rabbi Shem, which is very interesting.
About what?
About the Rabbi Shem, which is very interesting. The Rabbi Shem does not want to reveal who he is. He can't, because he'll take away your bechira, right? He can't openly do the Kriyas Yamsuf and expect you to remain with bechira. Of course not. It's all over, because you see who the Rabbi Shem is, of course. But so the fact that the Rabbi Shem revealed such an open miracle with a bullet missed by a quarter of an inch, he revealed what he could do. Everybody said it was a miracle. Never seen anything like that. But it's not only that, he revealed who he is to the whole world. He performed it, and God never does that. But he always hides who he is. He doesn't want to openly show you his power and so on and so forth. So the fact that he revealed this incredible miracle to the entire world, everybody in the world was watching that stage. They were all watching that stage, you know. Why? So you have to realize that when the Baal Shem does that, this is a very important event. And that event is he has to be Matzliach. That's the edus of what it means for him to exist. And the fact that he beat every one of the enemies of who he was, he got them all. He threw them all out, every one of them. And even like what's his name, Brennan. These guys are all finished, and even further edus of who he is. It says in the Torah, and one will be stronger than the other. By Rivka, right? She went because she couldn't handle whatever, and the nevuah was by Shem V'Eva. One will be greater. I mean, they'll never be equal. And the reason for that is because the Satan is yonik from the Kedusha of Klal Yisrael. So when Klal Yisrael sins, then the Satan gets the food, right? And if Klal Yisrael does a virus, then the reverse happens. And the Esav is Goiva. When Klal Yisrael sins, the Satan eats from our Kedusha. So there's always a seesaw relationship, right? That's what we say.
How about this unity on Israel? What do you say about that?
I can't understand.
What do you say about this unity that amongst the Jewish people?
Disunity. Lack of unity, lack of harmony.
Okay, hold on. I just saw it. Therefore, what do you see? In the Esav, there's a war going on that people do not realize. There's a war going on between the Toiv Sheba Esav, which is Trump, and the Ra Sheba Esav. Esav is at war with itself. There's the bad part of Esav, then there's the part that wants to do tshuva. You don't realize it's not just, so the evil of Esav is dying. That's really what you're looking at. The Democratic Party and what it all, and you know where you really see it, which is stunning, and it has more than one purpose, Mamdani. How in the world is there so much anti-Semitism all over America? Yeah, and everybody knows that New York is dying. Why? Because New York is the greatest city on earth, and certainly in America. So if Esav is now going down, right? So what has to happen to New York? Go down, because Klal Yisrael is going up. Like, what you're seeing is the exact prediction of what the Torah says. You can never beat them. So if Esav is actually dying, then New York must die, because that's the most prestigious city in America. So that's the
For the
inequality.
Jews too.
What was that?
For the Jews there.
But it's also a way of getting the Jews to think about leaving. There's many things going on at the same time.
Would you say Putin is evil too?
What?
Would you say Putin is evil also?
Putin's an interesting guy.
But would you say he's evil?
Putin's evil because he'll kill you on the spot. But he has a certain streak of decency. Putin, yeah. I don't know if you realize that, what the Russians did in the last 5 years, it's incredible. Ukraine was worse than Ukraine was worse than the Nazis, right? So the Russians took a guy, it's just the irony, This guy Zelensky, first of all, as far as I'm concerned, Putin is right. He's right. Zelensky had no business. Biden talked him into it, whatever, of Zelensky joining NATO, right? So Putin said, he told Zelensky, he said, you can't join NATO because they're gonna move missiles right next to us, and they cannot be next to us. Hey, John Kennedy, he came out with a Kennedy doctrine. Remember, well, you don't remember, Khrushchev, right? The Cuban Missile Crisis, 1962, right? He was going to, he sent missiles to North America. So Kennedy, Jack Kennedy, whatever, he told him, you can't do that. You cannot put your missiles in the Northern Hemisphere. And Khrushchev told him, of course, from the lake. So this was the Cuban Missile Crisis. Everybody thought World War II was going to break out. Fortunately, Khrushchev backed off. But he created the Kennedy Doctrine, which means that you cannot bring any Russian missiles into the Northern Hemisphere. We will not allow it. What do you mean not allow it? Because we're not going to allow you to have missiles on our hemisphere, right? And he won. So what did Kennedy do? he was right. You can't bring missiles into the northern hemisphere. So he went to send ships to stop these guys. Putin said the same thing to Zelensky. He said, you can't join NATO, because if you join NATO, they're going to put missiles in Ukraine. I don't want them. They're not, just like your Kennedy did. We're doing the same thing Kennedy did, right? So of course Putin is right. Even if he has other ideas why he wants to stop, and so on. But he's basically right. You cannot infringe next door to us and have missiles because you're part of NATO. You can't do it. So what did Zelensky do? I'm very surprised that Zelensky's not stupid. He's a comedian. In fact, he was. So what do? If you're in a room, right, and there's one door, and blocking that door is an 800-pound gorilla, are you going to go fight with the gorilla? Of course not. You don't fight with Putin. They have, 25,000 missiles or something like that. Even if you felt you're right, you cannot go to war with Russia, especially then everybody thought that Russia was invincible, They didn't know how it's really a paper tiger, which it really is, and so on, Putin completely underestimated how bad their army is and so on, But he was right. So you're going to go to war with country that I think has got like 25,000 ICBMs? What are you, crazy? And he went to war with Putin, this shigging guy. So I always get a kick out of the fact that, so the Russians said, I have to get Ukraine destroyed. It's called payback time, right? And who's going to destroy them? A Jew. A Jew is going to destroy them, so is there, $600 billion of damage? It take him 30 years to come back to anything, and so on. Mamash, Mida Keneged Mida wiped out Ukraine, and Putin was the shliach for this. But he was right. Meanwhile, America is dopey. America is giving Ukraine money. Ukraine is one of the most corrupt nations in the world. Why do you think everybody wants to give to Ukraine? So they can launder their money to Ukraine. It's such sheker. It's beyond belief and so on, But why did he do that? Because he wants to show, he's a savior of Ukraine and so on and so forth. He was completely wrong. He's stupid. They should have thrown him out of the presidency of Ukraine. He destroyed Ukraine. Then I come back in the next 40, 50 years, how much damage is done to Kiev and all that. And so, you see the Nisim. You see the stupidity of these people. And they went, we got to give money to Ukraine. Why? It's an incredibly corrupt, and so on. But when you look at the history of Trump, it's got written all over it, messianic, all of it. The fact that he was protected by the onslaught of the United States. You know what it's to be able to save yourself from this type of accusations and so on, and the Rebbe saved him. And not only that, he's got all the other guys in prison. Now Obama's up for, Brennan and so on. It's really incredible when you think what's going on. But he's under divine protection. But he doesn't understand that sometimes, like I said, you have to destroy an evildoer. You cannot negotiate with evil. The next thing, Ishmael, Iran. Do you have any idea what it is for a little country like Israel to destroy Hamas, to destroy Hezbollah, and to set back the Houthis, and to wipe out the entire air force of Iran? These are not little countries. There's 85 million Iranians, and what does Israel have? 10 million Jews? It's ridiculous. What kind of their military fight against Iran is historic. They're all studying how in the world did you get Hezbollah. Hezbollah had 150,000 missiles pointed at Israel. And so how in the world does a little country with 9 million people destroy 3 military giants, especially Iran and Hezbollah. I mean, Nasrallah wasn't simple. He had a tremendous army and so on. But the Rebbeinu said, don't worry about it. You know, they went in and wiped them out. In one shot, they took out the entire upper command. Right? And then the pages. What they did with those pages, unbelievable. You know, they made. I tell you one thing: what they accomplished, Israel accomplished with the pages, is they made a lot of, I hate to say it, sex changes and so on. You know, with the pages and the whatever. They did a good job. Whatever. That's Nisim. You know how much it was Nisim in the floors.
Syria.
What?
Syria.
Oh yeah, and all of a sudden, don't worry, I'll take it Syria. And the guy was suddenly, why? He's desperate, Syria, because he can't put his country back together. He needs to make peace with the West, and so on. In fact, the Rebbeinu slowly is doing the job. Like it said by Crazy Joseph, right? It's Yatzvuru, stand back and watch. Hashem Yilochem Lochem, God will fight for you. It just wipes out everybody. It's incredible, you know, what the Rebbeinu does and so on. So we are seeing messianic, you know, we've seen that's the end of Yishmael, the Arab Muslims. You know, that's why, you know, it's so maddening that he had an incredible opportunity. And look what's happening now with the Haredim. Now, I'm not going into what's the proper course and so on, but what's happened with the Haredim and the Rav, it's incredible. Who ever heard that a country should destroy the traditions that kept the Jews alive for 4,000 years or 3,300 years, whatever, and they kept them alive, you know, and that you can go to prison and so on. Who ever heard of something like that? But what the Moshe is doing is incredible. Why is he doing this to the Fruma, to the Haredim? You know why? Because one of the problems that we have, that the Haredim, the Fruma have, is that the Rav, the Likud, and the Tanya, and all these people, one of the things is they give money for yeshivas. So they have a tremendous schus. They have merit, right? All these people that are fried and want to stop Torah, they have tremendous merit, all of them. And it's very hard to beat them in the Bezin Lamaila, in the upper Bezin. So Hashem says, look, your merit comes from the fact that you give money to the yeshiva system. I'm going to take that away. So they're committing suicide. They don't realize they're committing suicide, because that's the only reason why they govern Israel. They're a Rav, right? Because they govern because of Schus HaTorah, but they don't know that. So they're going to stop the Fruma, right? So that stops their Torah. So guess what? Their son is going bananas. He said, what are you crazy guys doing? I have my whole merit. Right? Because of this, you guys want to stop it? Are you crazy? I'll tell you what the Moshe does to these people is beyond belief. Yeah, it's just, so they're going to fall. You're going to see. They will fall. That's the last klipa. When they klipa means dangerous enemy and so on, you know. That's next. Iran has to go, they're next. And then after Iran, it's something, they will commit and make some stupid mistake and continue making the bomb. That's what's going to happen. And America's going to have to take them out, or Israel and so on, you know.
They've run out of water.
What was that?
They've run out of water.
Run out of
Water. Iran, there's a drought. Water.
Their main supply.
Yeah, even nature's fighting them, you know. It's just, and then after them will be the Rav. Somebody has to come after Likud. What Likud Likud has done is terrible. The war's still going on, 2 years. It's almost 3 years, and they still haven't wiped out Hamas. Why? Part of the reason is because of Biden. He stopped them from going into this one. It was terrible. How dare you stop a country from removing the existential threat? Biden did that. He said, you guys, because of people in Michigan, we're not going to vote for them. Well, you're not going to vote for us, the Arabs in Michigan, so therefore you cannot wipe out. Are you crazy? These are existential enemies, and you're stopping them from protecting themselves. You know, how evil can you be? That's why God is destroying Biden. Biden's legacy is wiped out. Everybody sees what it is, that he fooled America. He made fools out of the whole America, Biden, by hiding that he really can't be that. So, you know.
Did he place any responsibility on his physicians or his wife? That they should have said something?
What they did was illegal. They knew what was wrong.
Yeah, why didn't they open their mouths?
Right.
Who will take over for the Arab Rav?
What?
Who will take over for the Arab Rav?
Who will take over the Iran?
Yeah.
It has to be somebody who is an intermediary between the Arab Rav and Mashiach ben Yosef. That's who it's going to be. Who that is, we don't know. You know, I suspect, but I don't want to say who, because the only one, and I believe he would be that.
He just turned the Likud. And he just came back to the Likud. That's what he said.
What?
He just came back to the Likud.
He said it.
Who?
Gidon Sar.
No, he refused. He's a fool. He refused the position. He's a fool. He gave it up.
Say it.
What?
Say it.
Say what?
Who you think it is.
I thought it was going to be, 5 years ago, I thought it was going to be Gideon Sar. Gideon Sar. So I met with him. I met with Sar. It's interesting. I met him at the Hilton in Tel Aviv. Why? Because I had these premonitions that he would be the next prime minister. Whatever. So I met with him. I got a meeting with Gideon Sar. And I told him, you don't have to believe me, but I believe that you'll be the next prime minister. Okay. Pretty outlandish comments, you know, and so on. So I met with him, and I actually spoke with him. And I told him that I believe you will be the next prime minister.
He just came back to the Likud.
Yeah, they're prepping him to be the next prime minister.
Anyway, so that's what I told him. So then at the end of the conversation, which is interesting, I mean, it's a Gideon size. He was a major political figure, and I'm telling him that. Anyway, it was an interesting meeting. So he asked me at the end of the meeting, he asked me at the meeting, what do I have to do? It's interesting. I said, so I told him, you don't have to do anything. So I just told him, it's already been decided. That's what I said. Why I said that? But anyway, that's what I told him. It's already been decided. The only thing you have to do is accept it. That's what I told him, you know? And it was nice, you know, he was very nice and so on. That's what I told him. Anyway, the next year, the Likud had a problem. They couldn't get a government, if you recall. They tried to get a government, they couldn't get a cabinet, what do you call it, coalition together. Sa, who had a party, he had 6 seats. He got 6 seats. So Netanyahu was desperate, which is interesting, you know. So he offered Sa to be a prime minister. He offered Sa. the prime minister, and he would give him, if Saul would give him his 6 seats, so he could have a coalition, right? And he turned it down. He turned it down. Can you believe this? He turned it down. And I was trying to reach him. I said, what, are you crazy? The guy's offering you to be prime minister, right? For 2 years. And then I'll take over. And you turn it down? Are you crazy? You have any idea you could have demonstrated your ability to lead the country for 2 years? You'd be the next prime minister without him. But he turned it down. And whatever. So I couldn't get across them, and he turned it down, and I was right. If you have to accept it. Mamish was right. And he refused, you know. And then what happened? He joins that other Michigan guy up here, you know, with those guys, you know. So what he do is they had to sit in the opposition and so on. But in any case, he refused. So I had some other privilege, and, you know, of this guy. I hope I'm right. I can make a great prime minister. Because, like I say, the requirement of this prime minister has to be somebody who's from, not Haredi at all, because it has to be acceptable to the Hamonam of Israelis. Or else they won't all accept him, and that's problematic. So he has to be from, but normal from, so they won't be frightened, you know. Well, you know, some guy's going to come in with a face 4 feet long, and they're not going to accept this, right? So he has to be from, it has to be bright, and it has to be well known. So I don't know why or how these things, you know. So I met somebody, you know, and I gave him a shia. When he came to my house in Eretz Yisrael, you know, where I'm now, and I gave him the guy shia of what I think is the divine agenda, you know, and I told him, I said, I want to tell you something. You don't have to believe me, but I told him that you were in prison, but you're not going to figure it out. Sure. You were in prison for 30 years. Well, it's obvious who it is, so and I believe the reason for that is you took away some of the prison sentence of Yosef HaTzadik. That's what I said. And all of a sudden, and I told him, that's you must do that, because Israel is dying, because all these guys are all corrupt. It's all shochat, corruption, and evil. I mean, you realize nobody's even investigating the treachery, the betrayal of October 7th? You have an idea this should be a major scandal? They knew about this. They knew this was happening. They knew Jews were being killed. And they sent in the army 7 hours later. They could have saved them. I mean, how long did it take to fly? What does it take? A half hour to go from, you know, and they didn't. Where's the investigation? Why isn't this being examined? It's one of the greatest stories of treason I've ever heard. You know, where they could have saved how many Jews? 1,200 Jews, whatever. Do you have any idea what kind of evil that is? Treachery. And people say nothing. It's astounding how Jews could be so misled and so on. There should be major investigations going on now. How in the world did you guys not send after you were told that they're being invaded? How can you not send and so on? And they didn't. Anyway, so I believe that their day is coming, and that's when you know, when that happens, when the Likud is thrown out, you know, and that whole crew of really bad people get thrown out, that's the end of the era of Rav. Because the Mashiach cannot come until the era of Rav is destroyed. or thrown out of Shlita, out of the dominion. Because it means that it's not the HaRav, it means that the supervisor of the HaRav, which is a Satan, the whole Sifrei Haramchal, the instrument of that is the Satan, and they represent the Satan. They're his soldiers. That's really what they are. And Mashiach cannot come until they are disposed of. So that's the simon. If you want to know what the simon is, that Mashiach ben Yosef is freed, he's allowed to enter, and you look at the Israeli government, because they are a major force. Just like they are the equivalent of the Democratic Party, really, in many ways and so on. And you have to like that. I mean, take a look at the Democratic Party, we'll make Schumer. I mean, he's all HaRav. It's amazing how much influence the Jews have in America, the HaRav, not just Israel and so on. But it will have all turned around when they are thrown out. And I'm hoping that maybe it'll be Jonathan Polland, because he would be very good. He's very bright, common sense. He's from, and he's a minor, right? He's like I say, has a lot of common sense. How it will happen, unknown. You never know. Like I say, America, God votes, and He always wins. Who God votes for. Doesn't make a difference what the Israelis vote for. Just like the Russian laughs at America. You want to vote for like some Democrat and Biden? No, I want Trump. And even though the whole America is against Trump, guess what? My vote wins. That's exactly what happens. It's all decided by the Zman, the Itoy. And we are very, very close to the Itoy. Very close. So look at all the miracles that are happening.
Close to what? You just said close to
Ito.
In its time. Yeah, we are very close to the Itoy. The Jews have gone through thousands of years of Golos. We are literally right at the end, and it's going to come terrifying, shocking. It's like Trump. Shock. Imagine what Hillary thought when the next day he won. They were all shocked and so on. It's to be just like Egypt had to wait when the time was ready. Same thing with the HaRav. Except that will be the greatest nitzachon of all, greatest victory of all, because they are the main people that are soldiers of the HaRav. The HaRav is the main soldiers of the Satan, just like the Democratic Party is the main soldiers of the satanic, all of them, and so on. That's what's going to happen. Yeah, and I think he will be very good. A person has to think, why Gideon refused to take is beyond me. He could have been a tremendous impression on the Israeli public. And besides, he joined the HaRav, which means he's going to be punished for all the evil that these people did and so on, but we're very close. It's just amazing and so on, Okay, so that's what we're looking for. The end of Iran, right? We're looking at the end of the HaRav, and we're looking for a prime minister that will restore the traditions of Christ. And it's not hard, very easy. People make a mistake. You can restore the whole position of Torah in Christ and so on. Without compulsion. You don't have to compel anybody. Just give yeshivas more money, Hadrabah, and we'll give the key of organizations more money. Right? Instead of giving the university millions of dollars, give money to the yeshiva.
Tiyibane.
Right. And so Trump will continue to go on because his time has come, and he will be responsible. But the real Geula has not happened yet. Don't think it happened. Trump is an assistant. The assistant doesn't take over the corporation. You know, there's a lot of things that have to happen before. And like I say, you know, and one of them is the restoration of Torah as the dominant force for Christ. So if that doesn't happen, if the enemies are not subdued, he can't come. You don't realize what has to happen for, you know, and it will happen. It's going to happen. Any questions?
I have a question that's kind of concerning me about the prophecies of the certain nations that are extraordinarily anti-Semitic coming and attacking Israel, part of the prophecies. And I wanted to know, with a lot of deaths, and 2/3 of them, I don't know if it's in Israel or around the world, but what do you think that prophecy will unfold, like that is going to happen?
Well, what will happen is that all of them have to, Torah has to be restored. Torah must be restored. You see, the problem is people all think that, well, the main thing, the messianic, is to be freed from Golus. No, not at all. The main thing is not just to be freed from Golus. That is really a symptom. The main thing is Torah has to be restored to its proper position of the Jewish people, which is the guiding light of God. That He has to be restored, you know, which means the Torah and so on, you know. It's not freedom from the Goyim. That really went out with the fall of communism. You know, that was the beginning of the end of the ability of Goyim to dominate the Jews. They're all free. You don't have them as slaves anymore as the Arabs. They cannot hold the Jews anymore as prisoner, you know. Look, things change. It used to be that the monarchies, or the evil monarchies, you know, but that changed with democracy. Democracy killed monarchies, and most of the evil came from the monarchies, you know, and so on, you know. You see the whole ability of Goyim to enslave the Jews has radically changed and so on, you know, because the Golus is really ending. Thousands of years of Golus is ending and so on, you know. But the amazing thing is probably that it's all going to happen clarifying. Right, you know, we don't know exactly what that will be, you know, but it's going to be like a sudden thing, you know, and that will be the wake-up call. It's going to, you know, just like Trump becoming, that should be a guiding light. Trump came out of nowhere. You know, nobody would ever have predicted Trump to be a president. Certainly to be a president twice. What is that, twice? It's the second guy in history of America to pull that stunt. You know, we get a bunch of laughs at all this. I don't care what you guys are thinking or waiting for the, you know. I want a president, he's president. You know, even if I have to stop the bullet. You know, that's what the Russian does and so on, you know. Yeah.
The rabbi has hundreds of shiurim with accompanying transcripts on his website, which is TorahThinking.org.
Yeah, what she's saying is I have hundreds of shiurim on YouTube, and they've been transcribed, which means you could read it. You could download it and read it. Right.
And the rabbi has a new book out on
the true power of speech. Amazing,
Right, yeah.
amazing sefer.
Yeah,
Hatzlacha.
thanks. Yeah,
It can be purchased at Feldheim,
yeah, oh yeah.
All the bookstores.
or on Amazon. You can find it there.
Yeah.
There's one question here. Question here. Ask.
Rabbi,
Yes.
you were mentioning Mamdani, is that his name? Mamdani,
Yeah, Mom, the fact that Mamdani could become,
the win, you think? Thank you.
maybe, you know why?
It's simple math.
He's nobody.
It's simple math. Because if the other 50% is divided among X number of people, then he's got the majority. It's math.
What's killing New York is LGBTQ. That's what's killing New York. And they don't realize that. They just had a parade, and somebody told me that 1 million people show up for that parade.
He's going to be the next mayor of New York.
What?
He's going to be the next mayor of New York.
Probably.
He's far ahead of everybody else.
And that's Menachem.
It's just Moshiachs.
Yeah, it is.
What?
And it's Menachem. To that New York will fall.
The Jews, tourism.
That's how, not corrupt, but that's how off the derech the Jews are. They don't even recognize who their enemy is, right? Because he's a progressive.
Yeah.
Right. Why do people love progressives? You know why? That's really what it is. It's not Mamdani, it's the fact that he is a progressive. And what is the definition of a progressive? Somebody who defies God.
Non-religious.
Right. They want progressive. Right. But, that's in the end of time. It's the defiance of God. Right.
That doesn't end up being.
Rabbi, why is the Islamist, the violent Islamist so powerful and why is it happening right now?
Well, the greatest defiance is when they're about to be extinguished. Think about that, a nova. When does it blow up like that? When it's about to be extinguished. Because the evil is done. And the Satan does not want to die. He wants to continue and exist. And the way he does that is by getting the Jews to defy God. That's what this is all this. All of it is what's really sweeping the world is a defiance of God. And since the Jews represent God, that's why everybody hates the Jews. The Goyim never forgave the Jews for giving them a conscience about a God. That's what Hitler wrote in Mein Kampf. He never forgave the Jews. He said, the Jews made the world weak. They gave him a conscience. Right. He recognized that. He was a bright guy, Hitler. You know, he hated the Jews because of his gaiva. You know, Deutschland über alles. Right? That's their motto and song. What does that sound like? I mean, a bunch of psychotic megalomaniacs. That's what it is. This is a war of God against mankind. If you really want to define it historically, it's the Migdal Baba. It's really what it is. We have come back to Migdal Baba. Right. That's why they hate. It's a war against God. Never think it's about you. What do they have to do with you? Nothing. Why do they hate you? They don't know who you are. But they hate you from their guts. It's terrible, intense hatred, because they have never forgiven. Look, the Gemara says this. Why is Har Sinai called Har Sinai?
Sinai.
Because of Sinai. Because they brought down Sinai to the world. Why? Because they hate God. That's why. Because Sinai was where the world received the Torah. We gave them a boss. Right. This is the problem, why they hate Jews. And they never forgave us for that. I'm like, same thing with Trump. You know, Trump, the reason why they hate Trump is Trump defies authority, because he is the authority. So he defies authority, so they hate the guy. The Democratic Party knows they cannot control him. He will not do what they want, and what they want, they're all megalomaniacs. They want to do what they want to do. You know, gender? What's gender? God doesn't decide gender. We do. You ever see these morons? What they want to do to kids? You know, is this logical? Of course not. They want to define natural order, which of course means God. That's all it is a war against God. If you want to go back historically, this is nothing more than Migdal Babel. That's all it is. It's our version of Migdal Babel. Except we always think it's about some guy. No. It's about the Rebbeinu Shalom. It always was about the Rebbeinu Shalom. You know? Yeah. Look, it goes back to Adam Harishon. Yisim Kelokim. Right? What did they tell Chava? Yisim Kelokim, you can be like God. Really? Hey, let's move forward. Right? It's always been about God. Even from the time of Adam Harishon, you know? And then it just goes on. Remember one thing. The flaw in man's psyche is either he thinks he is God, he wants to be God, or he wants to kill God. It's one of those three that defines mankind. I want to be God, right? That's Adam Harishon, Yisim Kelokim. I want to kill God, that's the, or I am God, that's Aryeh. You know, it's one of those three. Take your pick. Yeah? And it's always been, that is the universal conflict. That goes back all the way to Adam Harishon. You know? And therefore, we Jews can never get rid of the stigma of representing the Rebbeinu Shalom. We can't get rid of it. It's you know what I mean? And they'll never forgive us of giving them a conscience. Don't tell me what to do. You know? But that's, why do you think, why does God hate Haman? Why? He's not the only one that destroys, wants to kill Klai. Because Haman did something that nobody ever did. And that's why they hate the Jewish people. You know why? Because mankind has a problem. You know what the problem is? What do? We have to believe in God because the evidence is too strong that there is a God. But the problem is we want to do what we want to do. I don't want to stay him. I want to do what I want to do. So what do? So mankind has always done tremendous chokhmah. They call what's called an exit plan. They have to invent the idea where I can do whatever I want and still believe in a deity. So they came up with 10 different ways how to pull it off. You know? I don't know if you realize it, but they have 10 different ways. Either you don't believe there is a God, an atheist, or you don't know if there's a God, you're agnostic, right? Or there are two gods, one of them has to be good, the other has to be evil, right? And so on. Or God himself wants evil, right? Or God is about Taiva, the Greeks. They all came up with ways of doing whatever they want. But when it came to the Jews, they said, hey, God is not bribable, right? There's no way, we can't exit from this. God is absolute. That's why do you think Nimrod hated Avram Avinu? He said, they're all of Israel. Why should they hate just Jews? We're not the only one. And the answer is because the Jew had the unique feature that there's no way, there's no exit from Judaism. God is absolute, and he's not bribable. So we hate you. We can't do that, you see. That's why Amalek, God says, they made a chayzik of, even if you believe in religion, you still don't believe, you still want to lighten to the absoluteness of God. That's what Amalek hated. Amalek wasn't an atheist. The whole world was, the whole world was Avodah Zarah. So why did Amalek hate just Jews? Because the Jews were the only one that said, God is absolute. You have to listen to him. All the other religions had an exit. I can believe in their religion and do what you want. It's called, hey, have your cake and eat it too. Jews did not allow that. That's why Nimrod hated Avram Avinu. It's no good. Right, yeah, they have to give us what Amalek was. Amalek was a tremendous, why they hated Jews. And that's why the world is always, even though there's Christianity and there's Islam, but we hate the Jews because they're the one who gave us this disease.
The idea.
Right, that he's absolute. No bribes. You can't bribe God. You can't get away because he knows everything. You're stuck. We hate you. That's why they hate Trump, because he's not bribable. He's too rich. You can't bribe the guy. He doesn't need your fame. He's the most famous man in the world, right? He's got all the money he wants. What are you going to give him that he doesn't have? Nothing. So they hate him because he can't be ruled over. It's all about, right, that's why they hate him. Of course, it's all satanically pushed and so on, But it always boils down to who's the boss. From Adam Rishon, he was the one who set the tone, V'yisem Kelokim. He set the tone. And that's been the motto for all the thousands of years and so on, Wow, I'm really sorry I kept you people up so late.
It's